Let's
Now,
start anew. Ladies and gentlemen, Ronald
yeah,
Boumans from the
yes,
Netherlands.
thank you. Okay, I started my career just in the post-glacial stage on a geological time scale very long ago, 1987, as a research and development of medical devices. And I've worked in lots of different roles, also looking at research into the quality of life related to the use of medical devices. And in 2002, I started working as a senior inspector for the Dutch Healthcare Inspectorate. So I've seen that side for 11 years, and I was responsible for the southern half of the Netherlands, manufacturing, distribution, authorized representation, and use of medical devices together with my team. So there was quite a lot of work and very interesting. But after 11 years, if I wanted to grow there, in career, I needed to go into management, and I didn't want to do that. So I started working as a consultant for Emergo, later Emergo by UL. And since June last year, I have my own uh, consulting company where I provide all sorts of PRC services like training and also work as a PRC, outsourced PRC. And I do a lot of strategic consulting for clients, so to help them. And
I'd like to
since
hear about
yesterday,
your Americo experience because I've had a couple of folks over my decade or so in industry ask me, what do I think of them? And I don't have enough information to have an opinion. So I'd like
oh,
to
okay.
hear about your experience there.
Oh, I've had great fun there. It was really interesting to work there as a consultant and learned a lot. But when UL took over, it's an American organization and they bring American culture because America was started by a Dutch guy, René van Zanden. And so that Dutch mentality was in there. And when it started to come to America, and that didn't work for me. And
Hmm.
I tried because I liked the organization. But no, it didn't work. So I decided to start working for myself.
Hmm.
And I don't know how they're doing now. I'm not going to comment on that.
Hmm.
Right. And but since yesterday, I joined forces with some other people. It's a joint venture. It's an authorized representative. A very innovative concept of authorized representation, together with clinical strategy. So it's company. The full name is Authorized Representative 2.0, Clinical Strategy 2.0, but the working name will be AR2C2. Um, and what we'll do, we'll focus on startups.
And
Um,
I understand you then you're saying that as of yesterday, you formalized something with a few other
yes,
people to create a new enterprise?
yeah, yeah.
How
And
exciting.
this is very hot news. You're the first to know. It's the
Ah,
first public thing
you
about
have
this.
scooped the
Yep.
world on the news.
Yeah. So you have scope, right? Um, yeah. So and we work with startups, and so what we want to do is if you have a startup and you want to sell your product in an acquisition at the best price, then those new investors they need certainty about your device, right? So if you manage to get certified according to the toughest rules, like the NDR, IVDR, they globally right now they're top of the food chain, right? With one of the toughest notified bodies, and then sell the product in one of the European member states, only one, but a very competitive one, then you can show the device works, it's safe, it is certified, and it sells, right? You give certainty to your potential investor. So basically, we want to do that not because it's easy, but because it's difficult, right? We help them. And because Europe, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere.
There's a song like that.
Yeah, I know. I'm not having a dream because I've done this. I worked with a company that targeted just one single market, got the evidence, and it was sold for a good price. And I thought, okay, I see an opportunity here. So that's what we're going to do now, and just watch this space, right? So, but enough about that. Oh, first the disclaimer. it's my personal regulatory opinion. Whatever you do with it, that's not my responsibility. The MDR. I don't want to talk about MDR problems. I want to talk about the opportunities in the light of Regulation 2023/607. We all know I mean, you're either working in high-end regulatory teams or you're a consultant. We all know about the upcoming squeeze. You have prepared your company or your clients by now, and if not, you know what's heading their way, right? So I will not talk about the timelines, the procedure. I want to discuss opportunities. What can you get from this? What can you grab here? That's what I want to share today. Now, one thing about timelines and procedures. This is just out. Came out this week. It's a flow chart published by the European Commission, and it shows very well when does a device when does this extension apply to a device, and how can you stay there? What do you need to do to stay there? So this is something, if you want to have a discussion with this about the details, this is a very good flowchart where you can really quickly find your way through it. So let's talk about selling soap, because I think we need to sell soap, regulatory soap. If you look at soap commercials, they never say that you will smell bad if you don't use soap. They just don't do that, right? Oh, just use our soap because otherwise everybody will hate you because you smell so bad. No, that's not how it works in commercials. That's not how you sell a product. They link personal success, they link happiness to the product, right? Buy our soap and be happy. So instead of focusing on the problems we have, the notified body capacity, scrutiny, and whatever you have with the notified bodies, I suggest, if you want to discuss this with your management and others, talk about opportunities. Let's first look at why we need Regulation 2023/607. I think the main reason is that the MDR had a design flaw. They expected that the switch from the MDR, AR-MDR to the MDR could be done during the normal pre-certification cycle. Now, that didn't happen. Notified bodies were not designated in time. We're still in that process, right? There was all kind of conditional stuff was not there, like implementing structures like UDAMED, expert panels, those things, guidances, they were not available. So it was difficult or impossible to start with the process because of that. And also, yeah, it's a detail. They try to squeeze a 5-year cycle into 4 years. Looks, well, I mean, if you stretch it a little bit, maybe it works, but it was already very ambitious to do that. And then they forgot there is reality, and reality can throw all kind of unexpected things. Always expect something unexpected. Brexit, COVID, a war, they don't directly have an impact on the MDR transition, but they draw on people, on their attention, on resources, on budgets, whatever. It draws on them, and that means there are delays. So notified bodies needed more time. That's what Regulation 2023/607 is doing. So here's your elevator pitch. If someone wants to know what's going on, the definition of a legacy device is going to change. So what is a legacy device now may no longer be a legacy device after May 2024. Notified bodies will have more time to do the certification work. And to keep your legacy status, manufacturers must comply with the MDR by May 2024. It's almost correct, this, right? It's correct enough to say it in an elevator page, right? Be compliant with the MDR by May next year. And that's tomorrow, right? In terms of regulatory processes, that's a really short time, right? So, suppose you manage to do that, then your notified body will assume your quality management system is in compliance with the MDR. They will assume your PMS will be in compliance. they will assume you will not change your devices significantly, right? They will assume all those things, and they will check those assumptions during their surveillance audit. So make sure that the assumptions are justified, right? So there are some opportunities. Let's talk opportunities. Let's sell slow. And of course, the first opportunity, milk it, milk this situation, right? And this is selling soap, right? Milk, I mean, well, milk it. That's something they may like. Your device may remain a legacy device for several more years, more than you expected. It doesn't end on May 2024. It can go on until 2029 almost, right? So, and at all that time, you don't have to invest in MDR certification, so that saves cost. You can collect PMS and PMCF data, that helps, right? And if you want to replace the device with new versions, so you have this replacement device situation, you can already place that new device on another market and collect PMS data that you can use for your certification, right? So there's your opportunity, right? Now, your second opportunity, this regulation creates room for non-legacy devices. It basically gives notified bodies extra time. It only works for devices that are certified under the directives. New devices are out of scope, so notified bodies can spread the capacity over several years. And that means that they can free up capacity for new devices. Right, there you go. So if you have a new device, this is what you can do. And I know there's at least one notified body working on a specific team for startups. They're not advertising it yet because they're not fully ready, but they are already discussing with potential clients. By the way, AR2C2 is based in Munich, but don't draw any conclusions from that. So, knowing that, innovation. That's opportunity 3. You can innovate. And this is the first version of innovation that I'm talking about. So, some manufacturers may discover their application is failing in May, in the spring of next year. So the certification will no longer be valid. And yeah, they could put stock on the market if they can do that for some time, so that they can at least keep supplying the devices, the devices to the clients. And in the meanwhile, work on the certification of the new generation of devices, right? So they really push that out. You try to recertify the same device, but it's much better to work on a new generation because the notified body, as we've seen, they have more capacity, and you can have your new generation of your device there. So it could be a sort of secret plan B for regulatory teams. Just think about that. And if you think about that, you can go a step further, which means more innovation. You have your quality management system that can help you to create exactly the right documentation. It should be, it's intended for that, by the way. You have your notified body capacity. So what you could do, you could come up with new devices that push the limits of the state of the art and acceptability of risk compared to legacy devices. And then you have manufacturers that are only relying on opportunity 1 to milk it out. You just kick down the can down the road and enjoying all those benefits. And suddenly there is a new state of acceptability, a new state of the art and acceptability of risks. So yeah, more innovation. This is opening up new opportunities. And now the last one, which is the last opportunity, which is the one I like most. There's an opportunity for high-end consulting. I think beginning of next year, manufacturers will start realizing they need to act. So they will start demanding consulting services. They will ask us other consultants, to push aside existing clients and work overtime and in weekends, etc. And that may have an effect on hourly rates, right? And I think they should not be surprised if that happens, right? And it doesn't end in May, right? After that, you have Article 97, right? that will be that I'm pretty sure it will be kicked back to life again. And we all know Article 97 is about a derogation for certification, and you have a single shot. You can have one try with competent authority, and if that's not good enough, that's it, right? You're not there. So doing that, I mean, if they're really with their back against the wall, you can ask anything, 500 euros per hour, 1,000. So what I now do is I tell that, and I try to make selling soap out of this. So I say, listen, don't worry. If you're now a client, if you have the project done now, no worries. We still have time, no pressure. We can do it. We can work for normal hours, normal rates, normal hours. But yeah, there will be others that will have this problem. Not you will be client, but others will do that. That's selling soap. So I hope you enjoyed this instruction of how to sell soap, this and promotion regulatory soap. Yeah, of course, high-end consulting. That's only from the consultant's perspective, not from the manufacturer's consultant's perspective. But yeah, and let's have a discussion. Thank you.
I enjoyed that very much, and I'm actually calling up a link for folks because your chat example reminds me of this book by Robert Cialdini. It's called Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion. And you're talking about, if you get your soap, now we'll be happy. He would call that scarcity. It's one of the 6 main ways to influence people to act. So an example would be, I'm going to a concert, 1 ticket left, whomever on this call contacts me first can get the ticket. There's an urgency to get there. And I think that's a very effective way to get people to respond. We have, Ronald, I know you're relatively new to the group, a combination of advisors such as yourself and typically smaller medical device manufacturers and startups and the like. What would you have the startups take away as the main point besides Act Now, which we've heard a lot in the MDR space? What would you say is their action item from this call?
Yeah, well, if you're a startup, I think don't worry. At the startup, you're probably not certified yet, but try to look at it from the perspective of if you manage to get your CE certification, if you manage to do that, you have done something really difficult. It is a very good way of showing that you're of adding value to your device. Let me give you one example. The example that I just mentioned. There was a company that made a very small device. It's not really very significant. It doesn't move the world, but and they thought it was worth selling the company was worth about 5 million. That's still a lot of money, but it's 5 million. And but then COVID hit, and so they had all sorts of problems in communicating with others. So basically, they had a pause. So never waste a good crisis. So they took a bit more time and introduced that on a specific one single European market, where exactly there were the companies that they were looking for as potential acquisition partners. And they were there, and they pushed as much as possible the marketing activity there. So they managed to get a foothold in the market. And that meant that some of the local marketing managers were getting a sort of itchy feeling in the part of their brain that's stimulated by the annual bonus. And they started complaining to upper management. Now, and during these activities that they did, the promotion activities, being at conferences, etc. Of course, they were speaking with all these people, right? So all these companies knew that they were interested in selling. So they were just bidding against each other, and instead of 5 million, they got 20 million. And that's why I thought, okay, yeah, that's an interesting thing. That's something interesting. If it works like that, if you can give certainty about the device, about the potential of the device in terms of certification, in terms of clinical safety, and in terms of commercial perspective, or commercial potential, if you can give that certainty, then it works. So as a startup, try to achieve that. Try to give yourself evidence, to create your own evidence about the performance of your device when it goes out into the real world. And yeah, a tough notified body, that needs to be part of that equation.
Fair enough. Luke?
Unmute. Hi, Ronald.
Hi, Luke.
You're great. You're a great presenter.
Thank you.
I concur on one point. I remember one American president when they were still young and handsome, and they said, "We go to the MDR this decade not because it's easy, but because it's hard." And I concur with that, because there are not bad things in the MDR. If you comply to the MDR, you're already doing good things. Probably things that will happen in that you have to adhere to later on in the United States as well. So
Exactly.
yeah, so I concur with that. But there was something else happening the last few years, and that's all the notified bodies and the test houses, they were recertified, and instead of they were scrutinized real hard. So they were not allowed to have much leeway in addressing your application. So they were like test engineers from hell that said, no, it doesn't say, the standard says this, and you just must do that, or else. Where in the earlier days, you went to either Wales or Hungary to get an easy application. And that it didn't backfire. It trickled through to the documentation of all the companies who wanted to certify the products, because then they realized, maybe our documentation is not up to standards. It even happened on the company I work for. We had a pretty good, regulatory system, because it's built by one of the auditors from DECRA. So it's all, I mean, if you just look at the system, you say, it's exactly how this auditor would look at any quality management system. But still, when we scrutinized our documentation, we said, oh boy, it says it was tested for biocompatibility, but that was from the previous device, and now there are different stuff in there. And that happened all over the documentation we should make. And that's when the decision came, let's not, first we had to be there before the deadline, and then everybody thought, let's give them documentation. We know it's not perfect, but probably they come back to us, say, you have to be better at that. And then we heard the horror stories from other companies who were, they got the complete documentation back to say, when they said, just get it up to standard first, and then we'll start scrutinizing it. So our company decided, well, we have some extra time now. Let's fill in the gaps we already know that are there, and just recently filed for application. But I know a lot of companies, I've seen documentation from a lot of companies, and it certainly is not up to standard. So it wasn't just filling the gaps between MDD and MDR, but it was filling the gaps all over your documentation.
Yeah.
And maybe for a startup, that's an opportunity, because you can start without those flaws.
You don't have that past. Yeah. Well, what I see is there are many companies that are struggling now with the MDR. But if you look at it, if I would look at the technical documentation from an MDD perspective, it would also be rubbish. So how on earth they ever got certified, I don't know. But that was before the notified bodies could really start to scrutinize, and they're now doing it. So,
you walk over the Medica and you see all kinds of devices, and you wonder, how the hell did you get a CE mark?
Yeah. Just simple label check. What?
Yeah.
Yeah. But so yeah, as a startup, you can start all over fresh, and make that fresh start, and don't try to copy mistakes from the past, because that's what I'm seeing now. I also see that the more experienced regulatory people they start to they sort of leave the formalities and start talking about the real performance and risks of a device, what it really means. So they talk about the actual content of the device instead of that they're worrying if paragraph XYZ is exactly correct worded, right? And they want to use so if I meet inexperienced regulatory people, they want to use templates. Well, templates are fine, but you must understand what you're talking about. And that's I think startups are in a better position now to do that. Yeah, I agree.
Nellie, I want to call on you. How, if at all, has MDR affected your work with your clients, given your focus on quality and quality systems?
Most of my clients have chosen not to go the direction of EU MDR because they're such small startups, the cost associated with it. I do have one client that's gearing up with it. And one of the things I've noticed, they've hired another regulatory person who's gone through EU MDR. And my perception, and this is just a one-time experience, is there's a lot of preferences being built into procedures to cater to auditors versus meeting the standard minimum requirements. And so that's kind of the experience I'm having right now. I don't know if that's true everywhere, but it is the experience I'm having with this individual that I'm working with. So I mean, it's a cost associated with it. You know, the concept of having procedures meet the minimum requirements isn't going to be the way to go anymore. You have to tailor your documents to auditors. That's my perception.
Oh, thank you. Samuel, I want
Nellie,
to, because I know you're
Nellie,
in post-market surveillance, and we don't typically see you on these calls. I'm interested in your take on today's conversation.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Samuel. I'm actually a regulatory affairs manager at EPI in Texas.
Oh, okay.
So we've
Right.
actually been vastly affected by the MDR transitions. I think one of those is having to do with, like I mentioned to you, Joe, like in a private chat, it has to do with the reclassifications of devices and just making sure that you are, every company's devices are not also being affected by this, because then the way that you're processing your EMDR is going to be very different based on how this device is being reclassified to. So that's something that we've been working with our notified body with from a regulatory affairs perspective. And with regards to our post-market, it's also going to define on how things are going to be reportable moving forward in regards to the EU MDR compliances and expectations that they have. So it's been a quite journey. I agree with what people are saying. It's very time consuming, but yeah, it's a good standard to practice moving from now. Hopefully by May, it should be established.
We had a chance to meet your president back in April. Brian came to 10X.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah. Brian was the one who introduced me to these calls, and they've been nothing but instructional and
Go
very
on.
informative.
Go on.
Yeah, I love them. Thank you, Joe.
I have to call on Dr. Stevens. We haven't seen him in a couple calls. He's going somewhere today.
Hey, Samuel, you talked about reclassification, but there essentially wasn't any reclassification between MDR and MDD. So did you realize they were classified wrong, or?
So there were classifications. One of the things that the EU MDR had established is obviously the set plan, right, of what products. Regulation 2022-2346 was one of those amendments that was published in their EU articles to kind of add some devices that had been missed, but they were starting to become in the market, such as laser hair removal products. Some other ones that I saw in those regulations were like tanning beds, you know, some that were being used for God knows what, for medical reasons. For our products, just to kind of inform everyone, is that we make neuromodulation devices. So that's one of the areas that has been affected with this reclassification. But at the end of the day, it comes down to what type of clinical studies you're showing to your notified body to indicate where you fall or sorry, not where you fall, but if you fall under this jurisdiction of a reclassification. Most of that reclassification was done for products without a medically intended purpose. So, yeah.
And Luke, I have a client that had a class 2A wound, like a catheter for that technically, I suppose it was like it was had cardiovascular contact, and the way the intended use was written, it went from a 2A to a class 3, and it was just a silicone tube. The risk profile didn't change at all. The rule changed. And we had to do some extremely creative thinking and kind of rework the intended use a bit. And we were able to get it to stay in a class 2A.
Yeah. Yeah. And Michelle, I totally agree. That's what we've actually been doing here is with our notified body. We did a very great job in indicating what our intended use was. So that's what kind of helped us piggyback off saying, hey, this reclassification, I get it that you want to suggest that we do it, but based on our intended use, clinical studies, and other data such as risk management that indicates where and kind of clarifies where our product falls, we were able to, or at least in hopes that we can remain in 2A, but it's been pretty challenging for sure.
Well, if that happens, if you have a device with a problematic classification, try to meet any questions from the notified body up front. So anticipate on them. You so create a huge justification. We think this is the risk class because so and so, and get everything, all the evidence that you can find there. Because if notified body sees that, they know you have been thinking about it. But if you just say, well,
Exactly.
it's class 2A because, well, it's not class 2A, then no,
Yeah.
they haven't really considered it. It could also be class 3.
Yeah.
Then you're missing your first round of questions, right?
Yep, exactly.
That's one strike, right? 2 to go.
Yep.
So no, you should. If you think something might be challenging, accept the challenge. You go for it. And I think if you use that approach in looking at your technical documentation, so if you think the notified body may have a problem with it, anticipate on it and make sure it's rock solid what you have, and then you probably have less questions and less challenges.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you, Ronald. Yeah, very good point.
Eddie, you've been patient.
Yeah, hi. Well, first of all, Ronald, although it doesn't sound like it, I'm based in the UK, so not too far from you. And I would love to chat with you offline a little bit about our device. We are a startup. Actually, we had, before I joined the company, our first generation of our device was MDD certified. Unfortunately, that expired about 10 months before I joined the company. So we are not in a position to do all the stuff that you were describing in terms of, extending off of that, which is very unfortunate. But my question, so I would love to catch up with you and get some insights from you. But Nellie, my question is for you. Can you elaborate and explain what you mean about how you said it was more focused to the auditor?
Well, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
So, and then I'm going to focus on the quality manual. So I'm working with, my quality manual is a very short, concise document. And what I've done is I've broken it up to 4 parts. And the concept behind it is I'm trying to mitigate the amount of retraining that employees have to do, because your quality objectives, your org chart, and your QMS matrix change all the time, but there's not a requirement to have training for that. It's just awareness and notification. So then my quality manual is 10 pages. And the person I'm working with is telling me I need to go in there and summarize every procedure, because the inspectors for the EUMDR, they're going to go into your quality manual and they're going to copy those statements into their checklists. And then that's the only way that makes their life easier. I'm still challenging it because I still think it's kind of a waste of space to do the quality manual, but that's the feedback I'm getting with my quality. Now, I don't know, like I said, I'm working with one person. I've kind of talked with other people, and Michelle's one of them, and she's not agreed with that statement, but it's like the perception that you're getting from different regulatory people is completely different. They're not all on board and in the same page. And what I'm finding with this one conversion or upgrade or whatever you want to call it, it's all about preference. I like doing this because it makes the auditor easier. I like doing that, and I like doing this. It's not back to, this is what the standard says I'm supposed to do. And that's really where I struggle, because my procedures are written against, this is what the standard says, this is what I comply to.
Yeah. Well, we've also had some issues with the way the whole thing is written. There are certain elements of our technical file that we submitted, and then they said, well, you didn't say this. And we're like, well, we said it in part 3C subparagraph 7. Why do we have to say it in part X, subparagraph 5 again?
Yeah, and that's kind of
So it's,
yeah, that's what I'm struggling with. Is one of the things Bushman QC really strives to do is not repeat things, because when you repeat it, when you update one section, the probability of missing 2 or 3 more locations with the same language is high. So we strive to do that. And that's the other feedback that I'm getting is the same thing you're saying. I got to repeat and repeat and repeat. And then like, you're just creating a potential non-conformance in my system because your comfort level or preference. So I'm not finding it easy, and it's not my favorite thing, but I am still going to try to run true the way Bushman QC is, because we're trying to design a system that is easy to use, but doesn't create opportunity for non-conformances.
yeah, I mean, I'm not putting the whole thing together, thank goodness, because I don't have the technical skill. But what I'm thinking is maybe there would be a way of hot linking within your tech file so that you have this, reference, and then it's the same reference. And so you're always hot linking it, and it updates throughout, a bit like, having an automated table of contents.
It's interesting, and not that I want to plug anybody, but there's a company called Matrix Requirements that actually does a brilliant job in their system, where if you create something that's standard text that you're going to duplicate, you can create a field in their system, and then that field can be referenced all along in anything, your tech file, your procedure, and then when it changes, it will automatically cascade through to all your systems. It's a hyperlink, and it's one I want to evolve into. I haven't really used it. I have played with it in their design control elements, and I really like it. It's so far it's functioned that way. But to your point, that's exactly. It's like, how can I do this once and not think about it?
Andre.
Thanks, Joe. No, we've had, we're a contract manufacturer of electronic medical devices. We've already had two of our contract manufacturing customers just totally opt out because of the requirements of MDR. Just wondering if consultants in the field have seen that trend where they're just opting out when they analyze the cost versus benefit for the market that they have. And then secondly, that's one question. And secondly, for Ronald, I mean, does the EU realize that many good products may not be available any longer in the market?
Well, I don't see that trend, to be honest. That's not the clients that I'm working with. The clients that I'm working with take that opportunity, but maybe that's a perspective from the US market. But I think it has been said here already. We can expect that in the near future, US requirements will also go up and become more complex, more detailed. So it is just a postponement of just postponing the whole thing. I think that what's going, we may have a situation that some devices are indeed leaving the market, but I see there are a lot of other companies really pushing for it, and they are looking at what their competitors are doing. The example that I gave of trying to squeeze in a new state of the art with a new device, new state of the art and acceptability of risks, that's a realistic one. It has happened, and some companies are now struggling with that. And they're blaming MDR for it, but it's a lack of innovation. It's their own fault. They even if there had only been an MDD, you still have to comply with the state of the art in safety and performance of a device. And so if that happens, it would also have the same effect.
How do you account for things that are like commodity products where there's really no state of the art? Like these wound drain catheters that I was talking about, it's a silicone tube. They have not changed in 40 or 50 years. I've got a lot of customers that either chose not to start or pulled out MDR. They pulled out of MDR. I had one that pulled out of MDR because they had a 2A interosseous IV. Again, has not changed in 40 years. And they pulled out when their notified body got up to $100,000 in fees with no end in sight. And they're like, this product we sell for like a couple of dollars. We're never going to be able to recoup this cost, much less the maintenance cost of MDR.
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that. It happens, and I think we're going to see some kind of reshuffle in the market. Yeah, some prices may go up because there's no competition and there's just one supplier, and yeah, they invested in the certification, so they are going to sell. They are going to dictate the price. That's the price we're going to pay for that. But I think it's temporary. Over time, more competitors will come, and so that will push down the price again. But that's yeah, it happens. But those are in general not the those are exceptions, which you're mentioning. They are true, but I see them as exceptional cases. I always compare, if a company compares about a high cost, I say, what are you spending on marketing then, right? And marketing is about gaining market share, and regulatory is about the market, right? It's about 0 or 100% of the market. And so that's, yeah, it's just a matter of also a matter of priority for a company often.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I can just join in. Actually, what we've been seeing is our clients have not been transferring over all their products to MDR, maybe half of them in their portfolios, but it's really been because actually they're legacy devices anyway, and they probably don't need to transfer it over. So I think some of the scary statistics of many of them won't be transferring over is because some of them are just leaving the marketplace because they're not really being sold anymore anyway.
Thank you, Kristen. Will you introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah. Hello, I'm Kristen Mittal. I run a regulatory affairs consulting group in the US. So yeah, first time joining the call. It's real nice.
Friend of Maren. And now friend of ours. Okay. Maren, did you want to tell us the good news about our friend?
Mom, we can't hear you.
Okay.
Now,
There we go.
okay. Several of you were on the call last December, I think, when Sahil presented for SoftCon, the ear cleaning headset thing. So they've got their second version product out. They're still doing really well, and they've been going to all kinds of different trade shows. And they have a research facility here in Redmond, Washington. So my husband and I are going to go out there next week and get our ears cleaned.
Mhm.
That sounds like a good time. I regret being so far away, or I totally crashed that party.
You should definitely do it. Yeah, it sounds like it'll be an interesting experience, and we get to be part of the research subjects as they develop the next version.
When is it?
Oh, you can go out anytime. They've just got a research facility, but we're going to try to get out there next week.
And Dr. Carr, you also have some good news to share?
Just moving along, right? About 2 months away from our first submission to FDA. And from what I learned yesterday, once we submit, our first submission will be using an inner 18 gauge needle. For those of you who don't know, I've invented an all-in-one package, one needle filter device for filtering ampule-based medication. So the first device to be submitted will be an 18 gauge. And then we just have to add on like a code for the 25 gauge for a direct patient injection. And I just received word that I did indeed get my NSF grant. I have, yay, 6-time trying, never give up. And I have, we're using a local Maryland company to help us with the inner blunt needle. There'll be a little bit of change in the mold design for that. So that will be coming up, and our strategic partners are very excited.
I think I'd like to have you present next month if you can. We'll call your talk 6 times a charm, how I got a $275,000 grant from NSF.
Yeah. Now we got to work on a $1 million grant.
No, but I mean, I'm very interested to know, seriously, if you'll consider sharing it with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I
like,
mean,
what was it that, it's rhetorical for now, but like, what was in the sixth one that wasn't in the first five, or did you have to get this far along in development or this much closer to for another time? So that's coming up, folks. We're at the top of the hour. Ronald, thank you very much for joining us. You don't have to be the star of the show to join us. You can come any week. Kristen, welcome. See more of
It's
you.
in my agenda, so thank you. And Edward, just reach out via LinkedIn, then you can
Will
find
do.
me there. Okay, good.
Okay.
Aaron, thank you for that introduction to Ronald. Have a great weekend, everyone. See you next week.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.